Welcome to Appointing the Wise, a podcast where we discuss local politics, government, and philosophy, so that we can be wise and appoint wise men and women to represent us in government. If you like what you see or find it helpful, please leave a like and a comment, and you can find more information about us on Facebook. Also, I now have a Patreon, so if you'd like to support the channel, you can find a link in the description. Thanks. When you vote for a county commissioner, do you know what you're voting for? Many people can explain what a president, governor, or mayor does, but county commissioners often have a bigger impact on your day-to-day life than you might think. So what does a county commissioner actually do? A county commissioner is one of the elected officials responsible for running the county government. In Utah counties, such as Box Elder County, 3 commissioners serve as both the county's legislative and executive leadership. Think of them as a combination of city council and a county manager. They make decisions about how county government operates and how taxpayer dollars are spent. One of the commissioners' most important responsibilities is managing the county budget. They decide on how much money is allocated to services such as law enforcement, roads and bridges, emergency services, elections, public buildings, and county administration. Commissioners also make decisions that affect county property taxes and fees. When people ask where their tax dollars go, county commissioners are often part of that answer. Commissioners also play a major role in land use decisions. They may vote on zoning changes, development agreements, industrial projects, subdivisions, and long-term growth plans. These decisions can often affect traffic, housing, infrastructure, water use, economic development, and the character of a community for years to come. So when you vote for a county commissioner, you're choosing someone who helps decide how county money is spent, how the county grows, what services are provided, and what priorities county government will pursue. Understanding the office is the first step to making an informed vote. Welcome to Appointing the Wise. Today we've got Nathan Tueller here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's running for Seat B. If you just want to tell us a bit about yourself. I guess to start off, where can people go if they want to learn more?
If they just go to nathantueller.com, the website's there. It helps them learn a little bit about me and some of my background and some of the things I'm certainly focused on, but also they can contact me there. My email's on there. My cell phone's on there. If they want to send texts or whatever the case is. So that's probably the best way.
Okay, yeah. Perfect. All right. And then just to tell us about who are you? Why are you running?
Okay.
Go from there.
So I've been in the county for 30 years. My wife grew up here. Lived in Perry for 30 years. We got married with we were a short stint down in Davis County, down in Bountiful. And then 6 months after we got married, we moved to Perry and we've been there ever since. So Perry's my home, Box Elder County is. And my background, I've been in the landscape design industry and horticulture industry for like almost 40 years and had my own business for 30 and just started at a very young age. Just loved to take things that, from the concept of a yard and just beautify it, taking something that didn't look great and made it look really cool. And so I've just, we actually operated our own landscape contracting business for about 25 years. The last 5 years, I sold it 5 years ago and just focused more on landscape design, consulting. Occasionally I have higher end projects that they don't have time to manage. So I become kind of the project manager for them to make sure everything gets done right. So been in that industry a long time, a lot of different things, played sports when I was younger, learned a lot about excellence and commitment and hard work. I'm number 7 of 9 kids, and my wife is actually from a family of 9 as well. So when our families get together, it's huge all the time. I think my parents on down, if you count everybody and all the married siblings and grandkids, great-grandkids, I think we're at about 122.
That's awesome.
So, and they're still around, which we're grateful for. They both turned 90 this last year, as active as can be. And part of the running, I think there's 2 things that maybe you asked me why I'm running.
Yeah.
And maybe a side note, we've raised 5 kids. I've got a son at Box Elder that'll be a senior next year. All of our kids have graduated from Box Elder High School.
So that'd be the last one then.
Yeah, he's the last one. My wife graduated from there. She's been here since she was about 10. Their family moved from Paul, Idaho years ago. And we actually bought the house she grew up in. So we renovated it.
That's nice.
It's right on the highway just south of Maddox. Everybody knows about Maddox around here.
That's
so,
right. Okay. Yeah.
I know you're from Davis County, but I'm sure you've...
Yeah. Oh, I know Maddox. Yeah, actually, I know where you live.
There's a funny story. I actually was in Canada doing a presentation years ago, and you just introduce yourself. And I I said, hey, I'm from Perry, Utah. And people knew Utah, but they're like, I don't know where Perry is. I said, have anybody ever heard of a restaurant in Utah called Maddox? And there was a half a dozen people that raised their hand. I was like, well, that's the thriving metropolis of Perry. So,
Yeah.
so going back to the reasons I ran my parents, in terms of raising us, we didn't have a lot growing up. I didn't realize how much we didn't have as a kid, but I didn't really care about that. I had tons of fun with sports and friends and school. But my parents, I remember they were always involved. My mom would go to I know we do elections differently, but she would spend all day at the election precinct.
Oh, okay.
They were usually involved in the precinct that they were at. I didn't fully understand that as a grade school kid or on my way through middle school, but I got to understand that better. But they were there just to assist to make sure voting got done right when we actually did in-person ballots, which I would love to go back to that.
Amen.
But so they were there all the time. My dad, I think, and I don't know if my mom did, but my dad was a county delegate. He was a state delegate and was always involved in the Weber County Republican, what'd you call that? Republican group or Republican caucus down there that would just make sure elections took place. And the coolest thing about that as well is he got around the county. He was an extension agent for the last 20 years for Utah State down in Weber County. And so as a kid, I used to travel around the county and we'd go count and weigh chickens for 4-H kids. We'd do horse shows. I'd be at horse shows all day on Saturdays. We'd go to the county fair down there. So my dad was always all over the place and everybody knew him.
You said an extension
Agent.
What is that?
So Utah State, every state has a state college, and Utah State's ours. You can go pretty much every state has a state-run college, and they have extension agents that is basically a reach out to the community, mostly a lot of times for farmers and ranchers. And then they also they promote the 4-H club, which has to do with all sorts of things regarding the fair, raising animals or doing crafts or art that the kids will go through. That's just an organization. The kids would get together and do different projects. A lot of times it was regarding around farming and ranching and different things like that. And so that's why we'd go weigh chickens and help 4-H kids, or we'd be at 4-H shows where they do horse shows and the kids would come out and show their horses, and there was barrel racing and, the pole racing. I can't remember what they call that, but, like you see at the rodeos, a lot of those kids grow up and that's where they get their start, is at the 4-H. So my dad spent all his time really working with 4-H kids. And then Utah State was just a resource for, again, not even just farmers, but even for residents, for things like gardening or how to grow fruit trees or how to take care of them. And Box Elder County has an extension office here as well that Utah State supports. And all the research that Utah State has access to, you can go to your county agent and office, say, I want to learn how to grow grapes, and they'll give you information on how to do that. Or I even have extension agents in my business as a landscaper. They've come out to my job sites when we've had tricky issues with trees, or I don't know what's going wrong with them.
Right.
And
soil or
and they'll come out, work
stuff.
with, and depending on what you're doing in the county, as an agent, as a county agent through Utah State, it just depends on, some work a lot with farmers, some work a lot with 4-H, others work with, ranchers, or landscapers. And it's an incredible resource actually for people. So my dad and my mom getting involved in that, but also from the side of being out in the rural part of Weber County, I don't know, 40 years ago or whatever, when I was a kid, was awesome. And I know all those back roads and going to Plain City and all those places.
Changed a bit, huh?
Yeah, it has a little bit. Yeah, the west side of Weber and Davis County is a little different. Hooper used to be way out there. Now it's like, people are like going crazy with how fast it's
suburban now.
Yeah. So up here, the same thing with my business. I've traveled all over the state, a lot in Box Elder County, Cache County, Weber County, but I have done work all over the place, Summit County, down to Washington County. So Tueller County, everywhere from Preston down to St. George and Park City to Tueller.
All that landscaping stuff?
Yeah. Design stuff or projects of some sort, big and small. So the second reason I got involved, at least in the city council, I actually have served on the city council in Perry for 10 years. And I remember 25 years ago, this was kind of the second reason. My parents were great examples of just being involved and trying to contribute. And the other one was, I remember my father-in-law was on the city council years ago in Perry, and Perry was a mess 25 years ago. And I mean, with our orchards and the rural feeling, but there was a lot of challenges that the administration and the city council just were not willing to make decisions that would prepare for the future that needed to be.
Oh, okay.
And so because there was a lot of arbitrary and capricious deals or decisions made that they were picking winners and losers, who could develop their land, who couldn't. Residents would complain where they were trying to kind of supersede the farmers and what the farmers could do with their land. And I remember being in a meeting. I don't even remember what the decision was made, and me and my wife and my mother-in-law were sitting there. My father-in-law was on the council, and there was a citizen that turned around and pointed their finger in my mother-in-law's face with just this anger in their face. I was like, and in that moment, I was like, did you not just listen to what went on in the meeting?
Right.
And the process. And my father-in-law was one of those that just wanted common sense. He just wanted to follow the statutes, wanted to follow the code. The ordinances were in place, and nobody understood him better than him. And so oftentimes, when you are prepared and understand, and people that aren't, sometimes there's pushback there, right? It makes them uncomfortable. Maybe that's what it was. But I don't necessarily fault the individual point. It really affected my mother-in-law for years. And for me, I was just like, there's got to be a better way. And in that moment, I was like, I'm a small business owner. I compete with people every day, or other businesses for people's business, right? So customer service is a big deal. And so I'm like, there's got to be a better way. Like, we can be better at supporting the community at what they're wanting to do, and landowners. And so it was a mess for a number of years, just trying to work through that. And so I got involved because I felt like we were heading down a track again that was just going to kind of do those same things. Like, guys, we have got to prepare for what's coming.
Right.
And so the last 10 years, we've not that we've done everything perfect in Perry, but the reason I got involved specifically with County Commission, because I see the county in the same spot we were 25 years ago in Perry.
Oh.
Not that we're going to get necessarily overrun, but we could be if we're not prepared, if we're not ready. And there's something about, back then they just dug their heels in the ground and said, no, 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 no. And then when somebody they liked, they would allow that to go through. And then it just created litigation and problems for the city, like, constantly. It didn't make sense to me. So I kind of got involved for prevent defense 10 years ago. And from the get-go, it's about infrastructure, making sure we're delivering what we're supposed to as a city, and trying to balance the growth with the growth of government. Because I don't think your government should grow faster than your paycheck.
Yeah.
And COVID was an anomaly I went through. I mean, I was in the middle of that in Perry, and those things are difficult to navigate as a city on what you need to provide to make sure essential services. Now, you would think I'm being a landscaper, I'd want our parks perfect. I want the streets perfect. I want everybody's yard perfect. But I also leave that autonomy and individuality to the individuals. But from a park standpoint, if we could just have them clean and green, I'm good with that.
Right.
And then as things
useful.
Yeah, useful that they can go in and every, in life, everybody, even at work or business, people can complain about everything, or there's those that are really grateful for things and show their appreciation. Right. And so my focus was on roads, infrastructure. We have a little older sewer delivery system in Perry that was put in the 70s. There's a lot of new because of the new developments, but we have a sewer treatment plant, water situation. We have always been forward thinking, but not stretching ourselves so far. Because I saw that happen too, where
sacrificing the present for the future.
Yeah, and some of that has to happen. Like, if you don't prepare, you're going to get stuck, and it's and it's going to be. And I actually went through the caucus system. I did not gain any, go the signature route. I stated on my application that I had that option, but from the get-go, I never intended on doing that. I'd never run for a larger office where I had to go through the caucus system. But I actually was the only one that knocked on every delegate door. I went all over the county to say hello. And in that process, seeing what's happened in Perry and what's going on in these smaller communities with growth, I mean, they're concerned and part of it is they weren't willing to make difficult decisions to prepare. And the more prepared you are, the less overwhelmed you are, which is what I've discovered in the last 10 years in Perry.
Yeah. So when you talking about that caucus part, are you talking about that as far as applying for the county commission, or do you mean when you were being the city commission?
No, sorry, for the county commission part.
Okay.
So, because, city council is just, sign up and you run in the community,
That's
right?
kind of what I was thinking. I was just making sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you clarifying that, because I had some ask me that, but I from the get-go, I was like, if I can't go out and talk to people, and I feel like I gained like 300 new friends. I didn't catch everybody at home, but I think I talked to about 90%. I knocked on everybody's door, even in Park Valley, even in Hansel Valley, even in Snowville, up in Portage, up in Plymouth. And those I didn't catch. I tried to text and call on the phone. And so anyhow, I felt like I gained.
It's a big county.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of driving. And I did that in 2 weeks. Well, maybe just under 3. And so.
Had to block out your calendar.
Yeah, I did. Sure. No, I did. I'd go to work all day, and about 4 o'clock, I'd try to get off a little early as much as I could. And I'd go from about 4 to 10, except for Sunday, and try to catch people. And it was awesome. Like, it was just to be out there and hear their concerns. And I wish we could do more of that, to get an understanding. But I felt like I did that on the city council. I've lived in Perry for so long. For most of those years, it's getting bigger that I don't know everybody. But, 15, 20 years ago, I really did know most of the people in Perry. And so those small communities, and it grows bigger. But I felt like I knew so many that it was more of they did know who I was. And that's what I wanted those delegates to understand. Like I'm willing to listen, like very objective. I want to hear your point of view. And I don't own land except for my half acre on the highway. So there's no alternative incentive for me, even for the city council, to I want to go develop my land. I want to make sure this happens. I wanted everything to be better. And that's what my focus has been.
Okay. I appreciate that. So that kind of covers the why. And then I think a good chunk of the experience that you have, is there anything as far as your experience that you wanted to add that you haven't addressed so far?
Yeah, I think when it comes to, I think there's a little bit of disconnect at times from, or having somebody in there that has some business experience. And I'm a small business owner. I'm not some large corporation, family-owned business. So I started from nothing, my wife and I. And we built a great business that was built on reputation. And I never advertised in 25 years that I owned that business, the one I sold. And I still haven't, even over these last 5 years. I've done a Facebook page where I kind of show some projects. I do a talking trees thing where I teach people about different trees and stuff like that on Instagram. And it's not huge, but it was more like a posterity thing. So my grandkids like, what did Grandpa do?
Right.
Because I have a grandbaby now, which is awesome.
That would be good to have some of that video.
Yeah, but there's things that you experience in small business, like how do you make payroll when there's no revenue? And if there's no revenue, how do you generate more revenue? Like, how do you generate more business? How do you get to a point where you don't take a paycheck, but you got to make sure your employees get a paycheck? A lot of times, sometimes if it gets crazy enough, 2008 to 2010 was brutal for the construction industry. And mine lagged a little bit, a couple of years, but from 20 or 2009 of the winter into 2010 was brutal. And I almost lost my business and was facing, I definitely stayed away from it, but when you're in a tough situation, like this bankruptcy, like, are we going to go under? Are we going to make it? Right. And so I just couldn't bring myself to make decisions like that. I'm like, I don't care what it takes. Right. I'm pulling out of whatever. And it wasn't just my fault, but there were clients that left me tens of thousands of dollars that I couldn't recover. And so you have that as a small business, and, it's not necessarily a cash rich business. And you have one customer that doesn't pay, it can create a lot of challenges. And then the market, but it was just a no quit attitude. That I will endure it. Yeah. When it comes to tough things. And so that small business, bringing those creativity things, not that we're facing bankruptcy or anything, but asking questions that somebody that maybe just is in the private sector, just has a normal job, or somebody that's been in a state job for years, where they get pay raises regularly, government jobs or state jobs, things like that. And I don't disparage anybody that has a government or a state job, but the mentality is different. And that's all I want to differentiate, because sometimes it's just the way we do things. Like government, well, this is just the way we do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the way.
Right. Yeah. We have to obviously give bonuses or a pay raise because they're like, well, nobody else is getting one. Why should you?
Well, and I'm going to tell you, I have those. Me and there's two of us on our council that are small business owners, and we have that conversation all the time. Where some, it's if
you were the CEO of Perry City,
right,
as opposed to the city council member, would you run your business any differently than it's being run?
Yeah,
if it was your money and not the taxpayers' money,
right? And there is an accountability. I think there's a sacred trust what takes taxpayer dollars. And for me, being a small businessman and investments in what I do for my business, what is the ROI? What's the return on investment?
Right.
And it's not a cut and dry comparison, to be clear, when it comes to government, because there are different things that regulate what we do and statutes and laws that we have to follow. We just can't, wild, wild west and willy-nilly and do whatever we want. Although there are some that do that.
Yeah.
And then they're in check, which is the great representative republic we're a part of, because then they get voted out. And then somebody comes in that can kind of, okay, let's get back on track, which I felt like happened for Perry for a lot of years. And a lot of over the fence deals, a lot of good old boys stuff that goes on. And I don't have a problem with a lot of the, people have been here for years. I have a great love for those. In fact, a lot of them are some of my favorite people because they've got so much history and so many stories, but we still need to be fair across the board, how we treat landowners. Like,
if it's good for them, then it should be all right to do to everybody.
Correct.
And if it's not, then it's not.
So if I'm a developer and I go in as a city council and I just simply help developers get their stuff done, but I don't do anything for anybody else.
Right.
There's a problem with that.
Yeah.
So I'm there to represent. I'm there to represent everybody. And so that's the way I've tried to vote. And with that, just with that background, also a leadership background. That's probably the third reason is getting involved in the county commissioner. I think our counties lack some serious leadership in terms of what's the vision, what are, anyhow, in terms of
doing what the law tells you have to do versus do we have some other way?
Right.
Versus, well, if we want Perry or Brigham or Box Elder to look like this in 5 to 10 years, what do we actually have to do to make that happen?
Correct.
Does something need to change? Do laws need to change? We need to? And
it's oftentimes just like, are we in a place where the impacts that are coming, because again, we balance that constitutional rights of individual property rights and privacy and the things they're doing, and balancing that, not with too much government overreach, right? Because speaking to the things that happened in Perry, there were neighbors and even the city and individuals that were on the council at that time felt like they wanted very specific things to take place. And there were 5 main landowners, mostly all farmers or orchard farmers. And they banded together, took all of their agricultural land and zoned it to R1, which is quarter-acre lots or bigger. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of acres. They've left it in Greenbelt because it can stay there. But the minute they, file an application, or if they decide to develop themselves, they don't have neighbors telling them what to do. So there's repercussions, and those guys banded together.
They unionized.
Yeah, they kind of, and ultimately, when you're a century, I've heard the term of century farmer, these farms have been there since Perry started in, the late 1800s as 3 Mile Creek before it was changed to Perry, the turn of the century in the 1900s. Like, these farms and orchards been there forever, right? We celebrate peach days at Brigham, but the peaches, a lot of them come from Perry, right? So balancing that whole thing, in terms of not being arbitrary or capricious, but we need to follow the ordinances, and if they don't make sense, we can change them, right? We have that ability. It shouldn't be just one person, which is not what our council's done. And so I've spent a lot of times deliberating and discussing and like what's best, and being able to say, if this didn't work, it's okay to say that too. Like, hey, this didn't quite work as well. How do we change it to simplify it? Or, so anyhow, there's a lot of things that have gone into it, tons of things I've been through over the last 10 years and just the observance of that. I'm like, gosh, the failure or success of often any organization or group or business or whatever really comes down to leadership.
And so you feel like the city council in Perry is in a good place, and you're seeing warning signs of what's going on with the county commission and trying to move into that position because you feel like there's some good you can do there.
Yeah,
that
absolutely. Like
Perry's good for now.
if they don't, if the county doesn't get together
Mm-hmm.
and they start to get a serious plan together and not just get linear focused.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could have gone in as a landscaper and said, I want to improve all the parks. That's all I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have missed the road issues we have, the infrastructure we have, making sure we have enough wells that feed our system. But all of that work we did, we've got in, I mean, the progress we've made. The first year I got in there, we had budgeted like $250,000 for roads.
Mm.
This year we have 1.8 million. And for a little town like that, it took us a lot to raise that. And that's not just a matter of raising taxes. It's also understanding the growth of the city
Mm-hmm.
and not overspending and growing, again, not government growing faster than our paychecks do.
Right. Yeah, because that's something we're running into here in Brigham as far as paying for the growth, but not seeing the returns on the growth yet. And it's hot topic, I guess.
Absolutely. It is anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Utah.
So let's see here. So I don't know if, I feel like you touched on this a little bit, but kind of talked about what you've been doing in the city council. And I would like to know, what is like your philosophy on the things the government should or shouldn't do? Like you talked about roads. Obviously, that's one of the more important things. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know, thinking of it, I guess, from a minimalist standpoint, is like, I've got kids, I appreciate parks, but like, as far as the actual functioning of the city, like,
it costs money.
It costs money, and it's like, it's a nice to have, and it's probably near the top of the nice to have list, but I don't know that I'd qualify it as essential. And so I guess, and it's okay for a city, the state, whatever it is, to decide, hey, you know what, we're going to include these things as far as what our taxpayers can expect, right? We're going to make sure that the roads function. We've got firefighters if your house is on fire. But also, like, we want to have parks. We feel like that's an important part of our community and stuff. So I get that. But how would you describe your philosophy as far as what the role of government is, either in Perry, as you've been there for 10 years, or looking at the position that you're looking for on the seat on the commission?
That's a great question. I think ultimately government should be there. I mean, we've received our power by the people, right? And that's what our representative republic is all about, is they entrust elected officials to make decisions for them. Mm-hmm. And there's a process in place to get all that feedback. And in Perry, over the last 10 years, we've tried to get as much feedback as we can. When it comes to, I mean, we've got kind of a master plan with parks. You bring that up. I'm going to say I'm a landscaper, mm-hmm. but if we don't have money, I'm not voting to build the parks.
Right.
You see what I mean?
They can have a big chunk of grass to play soccer on, and that might have to be what it is.
Yeah, it might. And some people do. We've got a great old park in Perry Park. It's got a softball field. I would love to see nothing more than to figure out a way to raise a ton of money and rip that field up and level it out and, just have it cleaner and neater. But our team has done a great job.
It's like the Sandlot now, which I think is kind of nice.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of, you don't have to have the biggest, fanciest field, right?
But over time, I think as businesses come in, that's where I'm like, there are some benefits that come in. If we are spending money on it, it's most likely because we've received grants. And our team's been very aggressive, which I think is just taxpayer money getting back to our community, right? And so when it comes to, and even so the parks, but when we've done things, I do like to stay out of the way as much as possible. I don't want to over-regulate builders. I mean, if we have quality, I mean, there's inspectors that make sure our houses are built safe, right?
Right.
But I'm not a big fan of becoming like, which Park City's done it. If you go up there, everything looks the same, right? They have a building standard. I'm like, we should be giving more freedoms, not taking them away. More autonomy, more liberty.
Is that so? As you say that, I used to be more that way, but I know I live in a house that doesn't have insulation,
right?
And I know that unfortunately we live in a place that, if I could see it as an individual homeowner who's got the most interest in like that, but like like some of these like apartments or like more high density stuff, it's like, well, we're just, boilerplate, kick them out. And then, whatever happens 10, 20 years from now to the homeowners get like off of our.
And we have a little bit.
and we live in, I would hope that Utah is kind of not so much. We have to have rules and regulations like this to keep people from doing shady things.
Right.
But I think that the chance of that increases when they're people that are from outside the community as well. So I don't know.
Or national builders. And when it comes to, again, safety, I mean, you can't, I don't think you can close up a house unless there's insulation in it. I mean, there's inspections.
Yeah, it's old enough.
Does that make sense?
Right.
Because my house, I feel your pain, because my house was built, half of it was in 1890.
Oh, yeah.
And so
they probably have an excuse.
But there's the 1970s addition to my house is trash compared to the 1890s. The structure, I mean, there's still insulation issues. So we've done a lot to try to get that up to standard and put more efficient things and try to get things in. There's some major renovation. We've almost redone the whole house except the kitchen. So my wife's getting antsy and put an addition on
as
the back.
They do.
But I think our standards in a place that are plenty safe, but regulations like that only make things more expensive.
Right, which is fair.
So if you say
balance those
everything's got to be brick, it's going to make houses more expensive.
Right.
But, I think we've gone away from things like, straight vinyl siding. There's more, board and bat or, hardy plank or things that will weather better, which certainly makes sense. And the market dictates. I'm really a free market guy.
Right.
Because anytime you have competition, it does drive the price down. But then also those that are better, come to the surface. And so I think we rely on way too much government to solve our problems. I mean, if we just sat and just had a discussion, like, it's funny because some people are like, stay out of my way. But then when their dog barks too much, they want to sit.
Yeah, right. I don't need the dang rooster crowing every 5 minutes.
Or the chickens, right? I want my chickens, but I hate those dogs. Or, I love my dogs, but I hate the chickens.
I know. And I hear it when I say it too. I'm just like, there is a concern there. And if we did live in a free market, then we could, that there is tort law and stuff that could deal with the sketchy actors and stuff, and
you can. I mean,
I don't know how much I trust it anymore.
See, and I had to deal with a developer years ago. I have the legal opportunity. If I have an issue, I can place a lien against somebody if they don't pay me. And so I did that. I've only done that once in 30 years of business, and I'm glad I haven't had to, because when I shake somebody's hand, I'm delivering.
Right.
And if somebody wanted a contract, sure, I'd sign that. But that was not what dictated what I did. It was my own internal decision that I want to be a better contractor, a better person. And there was a lot of which to the chagrin of my wife, disgruntled, like, you're too nice, Nathan. but is there a way for us to be better neighbors? And I feel bad because I've had incidents with neighbors where we had some dogs kill our chickens, and I would have been, but it was my mother-in-law's chickens, and it just freaked her out a little bit what happened. So there was a process that went through the court system a little bit, and it was, I'm sure, a pain for my neighbor, and I probably would have done a little differently if my mother-in-law wasn't involved. But I was like, but still trying to communicate with that neighbor and say, hey, like, I'm really sorry. But he was also kind of irritated by the dogs.
Yeah, he's like,
because a year later it happened again, but just not the same extent. So it is a balance. It's not always just cut and dry. However, if you have people in there, in elected positions that, like, I love working with the group I have. I just don't see any agendas, like hidden agendas. Does that make sense in Perry?
Right, conflict of interest.
I mean, if there is, all of us pull out. But we've never really had those because we just deliberate and try to make things make sense. So if developers want to come in, here's the checklist, check the list, and you meet that and go ahead. And the design standards,
we've already made the decision before you come in, so we're not picking and choosing.
Exactly,
you're following the standard, and then we're good.
Which that stuff always leads to litigation,
right?
And we know that there's good and bad developers,
right?
And so when certain developers, we can't be discriminatory, because if they
just
follow
make sure
the rules,
standard's high enough.
Well, we just need to make sure that we're checking everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and help them along the way. And in my mind, it's not to catch them in something. It's, I want them to be better as contractors. And so when you go into a city, any city just wants a good partner to work with, and that isn't trying to circumvent the system and come in and yell at us all the time. And so in Perry, we've tried to set the standard, and it's not like minimalistic. There's a few things in there that we're looking for, but it's either this subdivision or a conservation subdivision. And if you want a developer agreement, it's going to be based on what's already on the books and maybe some creativity in there. And so it's just not overly common. And we have a unique thing with multifamily housing. So my main thing is when I'm making decisions, I still look at the Constitution of the United States and those individual rights and the state constitution. And if they're in violation of either of those, I try to look at, then there's no argument there. We shouldn't be discussing.
Problem solved.
In fact, we just had one of those. There was a discussion on a situation with bees in our city. And there's a state, our planning commission deliberated all this, and they didn't know this on the back end, but after they deliberated this, there was an application to regulate bees more. And I just don't want to regulate stuff.
Now.
But the state had already set a statute in place that said, look, you're a small enough town, rural small town, you can't regulate this.
Oh, my God.
And so instead of putting in the regulation that the planning commission had denied, but it still had to come to the city council, we could have approved it. It was corrected, and we just updated it to the state statute. Which was, we can't regulate. And we had a regulation, but we had to take that off our books. That's the type. I want to get rid of unnecessary regulation and clean it up because it becomes more clear. And I wish the state would do that.
And then we can talk to the state about whatever regulations.
Yeah, correct. Like, this doesn't make sense. We need to, for the bee example, like, we need to change the parameters a little bit for bee regulations. But based on the United States Constitution, the states have sovereignty, right? But cities don't have sovereignty over the state.
Right. Yeah.
Or towns, right? It's a pass down. So there is a balance, and people get frustrated by the state. But I'm going to tell you, if cities and towns don't act in good faith and prepare, they will get overrun by the state. That's usually why that happens.
Right.
Because they won't deal with developers. They want nothing to take place. And so it becomes this litigated argument. When you're talking about property rights, you're going to get some lawsuits coming at you. And so in Perry, I saw that 25 years ago. I see that in the county right now. And I just don't feel there's leadership there to set us on a course that'll help us prevent mistakes that are happening.
Right. Yeah. I think this will be helpful for our listeners. This is the first time I've interviewed somebody who's running for the commission seat. But I'm
glad to be your first then.
Yeah. What is your understanding of what the job of the commission actually is? Like, what is, oftentimes I've seen this in all kind of the elections that we're looking at, the school board, commission, state school board, city council, whatever it is. It's hard to know who to be mad at. And if you're going to be mad at somebody, you want to be mad at the right person. And I've seen a lot of misdirected anger, maybe justified anger, but misdirected nonetheless, at what people are doing. I think maybe this Stratus project is probably a good example of that, and we'll get into it. But what is their job and what isn't their job as far as you understand?
So number one, it's the highest elected office in the county. And it's a dual thing. It's not only a legislative, but it's also the executive branch. And so there is a dual role. Now, some would believe that they just do the legislative branch and they should leave everybody else alone. But I don't think that's what should happen. It doesn't mean they should go in, because every department, most of them, like the treasurer is elected. The county sheriff is elected. The county recorder is elected. The county clerk is elected, right? And so they do have the charge. So if there's something going wrong now, however, with the highest executive office and legislative office, there's oversight over those that they need to work together, mainly just like the legislative branch has the purse strings over everything. That's the one thing Congress has.
Right.
And there's shared powers and different things that they need to do in passing laws. But we know the executive branch passes laws through executive order. And then based on common law or precedents in judicial, that it sets laws, sets precedents for things. Does that make sense?
Right.
So there are some things that cross over. But the biggest thing is, I think for years, have we really held departments accountable financially of what's happened?
Right. They're the executive. So it's their job to make sure that the laws are being fulfilled.
Correct.
And they've got departments under them to make sure that happens.
Right.
what is the oversight of that looking like? Is that
Well, I think mostly the oversight is through the budget.
okay?
But we also have to work as a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you had to draw a line in the sand, it would be budget.
That's their
and our evaluation should be like I'm going to tell you, there's city councils that'll just simply roll over, and it's one thing to be elected. It's another thing to get in and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes they justify that, like, look, we're not getting paid enough or whatever.
Yeah, which is,
and I'm not sure.
I know the city council in Brigham doesn't get paid a lot.
$500 a month.
Yeah.
There.
And same thing, probably with the commission. I think it's a true service.
Yeah. Well, the commissioner is probably, it is paid. I think it's between $60,000 and $70,000.
Okay. So that's kind of like a real job.
Yeah. But there is.
Or a paid job.
There has been a little bit under, but it's not, I mean, you look at some of like my business, I mean, if anything, there's pay cuts that I'd be taking, and it's not the money side I'm looking at. However, the fact that when elected officials get in, and I just put Perry City, for example, we don't have a big staff.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a public works guy and he has a few people. We have a city administrator. We have a HR and finance director that's combined, and we have a couple of clerks and people at the front desk. So it's not like we have we contract a lawyer for our city, an attorney for our city that's kind of helps us look over things, but we don't have a full-time attorney. So we make things work, right? And if things need to get done, guess who gets to do them? The city council. So a lot of elected officials don't realize the work that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And if they want laws changed, they need to get in and be they need to take the lead on it.
Do the homework, have the votes, do the research.
Have you ever been in an organization where there's no accountability? Or what do you think would happen if there's really no true accountability to what's going on?
Oh, people just do whatever they want.
Right?
They hire whoever they want. They do what they want.
Yeah, and they get leeway. But there's some city councils will just say, hey, department heads, what are your budgets? And then they look at it and they approve it, regardless if there's a deficit or not. And then they say, well, and our county commission.
We got to have a party every Friday.
Yeah.
We've grown accustomed to a certain standard.
Yes.
Of living.
No, absolutely. And sometimes you have to be the bad guy and say, look, this isn't if you want the gain of the trust of the people, you need to do things that gain their trust.
Right. And
so when you're doing things that are kind of we talk about a two-tiered justice system or a two-tiered system that you do this, but you don't get to. And that's happened a lot at the federal level and state levels at times where we just need to, ultimately they just want the job done right.
Right. And
they want it to make sure that it's solvent, and are we taking care of the taxpayer dollars?
Right. If you're taking money out of my paycheck.
Right.
What is it going to?
What is it going to? And I have a lot of questions on the budget. I just don't think it's as tight as it needs to be. Now, we submitted a budget in Perry. So this is my angst every year. My number one job as a city council member is the budget. And then there's certainly ordinances and laws and things we discuss and pass or eliminate or whatever, improve. Yeah. But that budget, we discuss it for months. We comb over it. The department heads come into our meetings and present the budgets. And if there's more, why are we doing that? They have to sell it.
Right.
But then also at the same time, we have to ask ourselves, like, is there something we can cut? Can we get more efficient? Did they actually propose cuts, or are they just bringing us a budget that's not thought out? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, the department heads in Perry, I am the best teammate you will ever have. Like, I don't care about recognition. I just want the team to win. And if it means as a department head that I could get in there and say, hey, look, we're in a bind. The community's getting hammered. They got hammered by the school district. And this is a little bit of shot at the current commissioners. The last 3 years, last year they raised our property taxes by 12.5%. The year before they instituted another sales tax, and the year before that pencil whipped a UTA tax. And I don't think anybody knows that. And so overshadowed by
the school district.
The school district.
As long as they're not
like
the
they
worst.
But see,
everybody's got to increase their taxes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that.
Pay raises.
but that's the justification. But again, government should not grow faster than the people's paychecks. Right. And if and we get a lot of pushback where says like we do comparisons, and I'm ready to change our policy and just what we look at in terms of studies to say, okay, what are the people in this position in Logan making or bigger towns? but
Mhm.
we're a town of 6,000. We can't compete even with Brigham City.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean,
Mhm.
the
Right.
business is different. We need to be comparing ourselves with 6,000 to 10,000
Right.
population. Even I think Tremont's 14, but their business sector is big. But I guarantee you, we get more out of every dollar in Perry than any city in this county because of how creative we are. And so when the first budget came out a month or so ago, it was like $214,000 more than we had revenue projected.
Mhm.
I went into the mayor and he's the budget director or the budget officer. And I just sat down with him. I was like, this is how I feel. This is how a couple of the other council members that I've talked to individually and just their concerns and like, what can we do? And it's not just to go in and complain. It's
Mhm.
what about this? What about this? Can we cut here? Can we hold off a project just a little longer? Because we know growth's coming. We know revenue will increase. We know businesses will increase, but let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I want to give raises. I've never not given at least a cost of living raise the whole 10 years I've been there.
Mhm.
But sometimes we just can't compete. Like I couldn't always compete as a landscaper.
Mhm.
You know,
You're
maybe
like, hopefully I'm a good enough boss that you want to work
you
with
want to
me,
stay, even though I can't
can't
pay you as much. And
Yeah.
there's not as much mobility, meaning
Mhm.
upward mobility. It's just the way it is sometimes.
Right.
And so there's organizations, if we could get good at simple things. Now, I'm going to tell you, I am a leader individual, meaning if we have specific key leadership roles in the city, we need to make sure we have the right person
Right.
and we take care of that person.
Mhm.
And so sometimes they'll carry a heavier load, but we try to compete with those. But when you're talking about, like I had ditch diggers or, you know, they laid sprinkler pipe or they'd clear trenches.
Yeah.
I couldn't put them in leadership roles because it wasn't that big.
Right.
So either, again, like you said, either they enjoy working for me, I try to be the best boss and take care of them, try to get them to lunch and do what I can to make other incentives, or they got to find a different job. And that happened to me. However, my philosophy is if I've trained that individual, there's going to be an awesome employee for somebody else.
Right.
And I can't disparage them
And
wanting.
there's a benefit like for you to be like, I did some good.
Yeah. And I will give you a reference to anybody. I give the best references to my guys that just work their guts out for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't always perfect, but that's just the way I look at things. I'm glass half full guy. Like, if you're going to come fearmonger me, if you're going to just come yell at me, I can't do anything with it. I'm like, I'll listen. I'm always, I could be a good listener.
Vent, I guess that's what
it's a vent. And a lot of people just want to be listened to. They want to feel like they're heard. And I'm all for that. And a lot of times those individuals have great ideas. They just haven't been able to get them out. Somebody hasn't had a chance to listen. So as I went back to the mayor, the next budget release, and there's a process we have to go through. I won't get into the details. It's kind of what the state requires us to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it almost looks like we're ready to raise taxes, but we just have to state where the possibility of doing a truth in taxation, even though our intent is to cut things and get it in line.
Right.
But we're still not through all the details till we have to pass it. Does that make sense?
Right.
And the state says you have to do this, this, and this, and this. So we're like, okay, we'll do that.
We'll jump through your hoops.
And that's what it is. And so the last 2 years we've stated that, hey, we might do truth in taxation, but the last budget came out. Now we're well under 200,000 and we're getting closer now.
Mm-hmm.
Say, guys, we're on the right track. What are the different things we can do? So I'm very objective, but I try to make those decisions based on the state and the U.S. Constitution as best I can under the circumstances, and then not let things grow faster than people's own paychecks.
Thanks. And so what things should we be holding our commission accountable to? Or what things have you seen maybe people are mistakenly blaming on them that the blame goes elsewhere? Or have you seen anything like that?
I mean, well, I think they've come under the radar. I think the Stratus project has really shown a lot of inadequacies.
Yeah.
Like usually when a leader goes through something that's really difficult, you find out what they're really about and what their capabilities are. But I think the thing to hold them 100% accountable is the budget. Number one, budget. And if there's anything that's a big problem that really starts to concern people is, okay, we're raising taxes, but we really don't know what's going on. Now, to give you an idea, I've tried to get I've also seen the school district thing coming for 20 years. I can show you.
Schools
what's
have been
happening.
old for 20 years.
Well, and it's not even just that. It comes through the leader. Again,
Yeah.
look at the leadership. How are they communicating? What's going on internally? How do the people that are under that leadership feel? This thing's been brewing for a while.
Right.
And so, and they just felt like, hey, they were brazen enough, but it didn't come down to the first thing that's there of the big $250,000 or $250 million bond they wanted to pass like 2 years ago. That was a referendum, and they didn't get it passed.
Right.
It was the communication on what's the ROI.
Right.
I read through that in detail. I was like, this makes no sense.
What are you getting for it?
And so I'm like, I'm not going to go try to fix it. So, I mean, it was apparently that nobody else understood what they were doing either. And so they keep beating their head against the wall, trying to do the same thing. So I actually, and this is coming around to what I feel about the budget, is I asked I ended up asking somebody I knew that was on the board, that they're the ones that passed the budget. And I said, where did the $40 million go that the state gave you from the previous year to the current year? I don't know if you knew, there was a big chunk that they increased from like 98 million to 132 million a year.
Okay.
But not counting the increase they did on the taxes.
Oh, geez.
40 million, and that individual could not tell me where that money went.
That's crazy.
If you come into Perry and there's a $7 million budget or under $7 million, I can show you exactly where everything's going.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Because you spend months of doing
and we're doing the work, and we're not just saying department heads bring it in. We're gonna, I mean, all of us
delegating that to the people who have the interest in it going up.
Now again, it's not this dictator type. It's a representative republic, and they voted us. The department heads aren't voted.
Yeah.
We've hired you to enact what the citizens want, and we're just feeling based on what we get from the citizens that in Perry, I'm like, I know there's 3 of us that are not okay with spending $200,000 more and just doing truth and taxation to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can do the work and be creative to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's how my approach is. It's like,
go through.
Look, and I want to make you guys, and I'll give all the credit to the department heads because they're the ones on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's this disconnect where people are electing like, oh yeah, and it's not that I don't love my employees. It's not that I mean, there's just sometimes we just can't do it.
Right.
Just like in my business, I had to tell myself, like, I'm sorry, guys, I want to give you a raise, but we just did not do that well this year.
Right.
Or we didn't have as much profitability, or, I barely made payroll and then paid myself a meager portion. And I've done that before. And so those are the things that I bring to the table, that it's just way more creative than, hey, what's the solution?
Right.
And if somebody in a department comes to me, well, this is the way we always did it or do it, I'm out. Does that mean if that's how you're going to approach it, like, we need to start thinking differently.
We got to figure something out. We need somebody else in that position.
And when you get people thinking creative wise and critical thinking, which is what we claim we teach kids to do, and we're not very good at it, is some of the best critical thinkers are entrepreneurs and small businesses because they're forced to be.
Right.
So they're put in situations. And so I don't know that I'm trying to force them into those situations, but I'm at least willing to ask the questions. What about this?
Right.
And I won't just say it publicly, because I'm not into destroying people either. But if I can visit with a department head behind scenes and say, look, this has nothing to do with the great work you're doing. This is just simply the company doesn't have any money.
Right.
and what's happened through the school district and the county raising tax, or whatever the case is, and people just feeling burdened, energy's up, all those things that just start to pick away. And I feel that too, because I'm in the same situation the voters are. I'm not immune to that by any stretch of the imagination. So as I'm in the middle of that, I'm just as passionate about trying to figure out, okay, how do we cut? But then there also is times I'm like, we can give examples where we've generated a lot of revenue, not on the backs of the citizens, which is, how do you get the most out of every dollar?
Right. Yeah. What are the trade-offs? There's no solutions. There's always trade-offs, and you got to figure out
sometimes
what
that
is it worth.
Right. And again, it's a bit of a juggle, but it's I love doing it. Like, that's the fun part. And I really don't care about any of the, we've got such a great team in Perry, and we have our challenges, don't get me wrong, but the way it's approached, I just love it. And not that that's the answer for the county, but if we don't do things differently, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, we got to
what happened 25 years ago and what Perry faced, we're heading like a freight train right to it. And the one thing that'll happen is your taxes will continue to go up unless we do things differently.
In a lot of these interviews with whatever the position is, there's discussion of transparency as far as that goes. And like you'd mentioned with the school board, I guess lack of transparency, or they're trying to be transparent, but they're not good at it.
Right.
And it's hard to get good information out there that's comprehensible and, isn't an hour-long video or a novel kind of thing. So what kind of things could you see improving with the commission as far as that transparency goes?
Right.
If you'll talk about that.
So I apologize for talking things we do in Perry. So I was involved in a new general plan a number of years ago, and I've been involved in a general plan of creating for parks to have a good plan in place. And so number one, planning. But when you get that plan, it's not that you're creating it, but what we've done is we've done multiple town halls where they've come in and marked. We've had beautiful displays. Like, this is what we want to do in our parks. Or we partnered up with UDOT. Instead of complaining about UDOT, we reached out to UDOT and said, we've got 2 thoroughfares. We got a highway and we got a freeway coming through Perry.
Mm-hmm.
Those are big challenges. Can we get with you to figure out what we'd like to see when you're ready to spend money?
Mm-hmm.
So we got with them, and it's taken time. It's never a fast process, probably a year and a half to 2 years. But as we went through that, there was multiple meetings, others on the council that were involved. And then when we had something solidified, that was more just concept, like I do with landscape design. I sit down with some general ideas that I've created after interviewing my client, and we sit down and we talk about them, redline them up. We do that with our community. Say, come into the council. We're over at the lodge. We're going to have displays, and then we have them stickers. What do you like? What do you don't like? And they give us feedback. And then we take that with UDOT, went back and revised things, and then come back with a better plan and say, this is what we're looking at doing. Is there any other feedback? So now we have a plan in place where there's grants that come about, or that UDOT's like, hey, who's ready with a plan? Guess who's ready? Perry is. Right. We've got a plan in place, because community's like, yeah, give us money, but they don't have a plan.
Right.
And so that's one way we've done it with town halls. We did it with our park plan, which is awesome. And they came in and were like, well, I like this and I don't like this, or I like this concept. And they bring in, we'd find grants to get a company to come in and help us just put the presentation together on big boards that people can see, that are colorful. And I think the school district can learn from that, and the county. But if the county's not planning anything or getting ready for anything or understanding what it is.
Well, they're getting ready for something.
Yeah. But I'm not saying whether that data center comes or not, there's problems in the county that still are a problem.
Right. And
so if we don't address those, it's going to only make it worse.
Okay.
Or accentuate those problems. That makes it, or it could actually make them worse, because we're so focused on the shiny light over here that the fundamental things that are so critical for a successful city, town, or county, or state are being overlooked.
Right.
And that's exactly what's happening.
3 things you need to make sure happen.
Right.
If you're focused on a bunch of other stuff, those things are going to start suffering.
That,
and going to cost more money.
Yeah, no, and it does. And if you constantly are saying no, guarantee you'll see things that just come up. But now there's big things that have to be decided, but you also don't have to go overboard. Our council a few years ago went overboard on a sewer treatment plant that we're never going to reach full capacity before we actually have to renovate the whole thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it'll be worn out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, we build a 50-story building, but we'll never fill 20 stories before we have to renovate the whole building.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Does that make sense?
It was a waste, it sounds like.
Yeah, and so it's like we could have scaled that back a little bit and scaled to it. Does that make,
Right.
So there's strategy in
have
there.
Have the land there, but don't develop all the land until you need it.
But if you have, people that don't have any background in business or contracts or development or anything that scales or growth, they're going to be out of their element, which is
right.
Is what we're seeing.
They went to the car dealership and they listened to what the guys say. We're like, yeah, we definitely need heated seats and we need this and that and eco mode and sport mode. And turns out we're just going to be getting the groceries and taking the kids to soccer. We don't need all that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And governments are notorious for hiring consultants, and then they come back with estimates that are outrageous. And I've got an example of that in Perry where we were like, no go. So we went a different route, and we saved a third of them. It cost us a third of what they projected. Like, how can you argue with that?
That's good to know, right? That's the kind of stuff that would be nice to know about from the community. Be like, hey guys, just so you know,
right? Yeah, you'll always.
We did a good job here. If you're always hearing about the tax increases, but.
And one thing, I'm not a self-promoter per se. I mean, I want to communicate clear, but you're not going to, I mean, once something's done, I'm like on to the next thing already.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, okay.
But you might need to do that a little bit more.
Yeah,
right?
that might be when.
That's the key to the commission and the school board right now.
Yeah. In terms of patting ourselves on the back. But if the community's engaged, they're already aware.
They already know that. Yeah. That makes sense. Hey, did you know? Yeah. I wanted to get back to philosophy on something because I think this is important for any elected official is, when you come to a place where you disagree, like I appreciate as part of a republic, the desire to know what the people want to be done. I think it's self-evident. Maybe you have to go to the federal level. At least I think you could hit it at the state level, and it's probably happening in cities, is that those who vote either don't have enough information or they're ignorant enough that they may have wrong ideas about how things should work and what works and what doesn't, right? I don't think we need a nanny state to tell us what Big Brother should be doing because we can't handle it ourselves.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that there are situations where the electorate can be misinformed or not have all the information or whatever it is. How do you balance that when you have to make a decision that goes against what the people want? How do you overcome that, or what is your thoughts on that? Do you give the people what they ask for, whether it's good best for them or not, or how do you address that?
I think there's consequences to any decision, right? And as elected officials, I think part of what you are asking us to do as a voter is to make hard decisions.
Right.
And so our job is to get as informed as possible. What is the process we have to go through? And if you're doing that process regularly, the public will have greater confidence in you that you're making those decisions. Now, I use this example, and this might be a little extreme example when you say, how do you choose against what everybody wants?
Right.
So let's go to the Constitution. If I was in Perry and the entire town came to me and said, I want to restrict and eliminate the Second Amendment.
Okay.
I will tell you right now.
No dice.
I am in the position. I was sworn in to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state constitution.
Okay.
I would immediately say no.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean I wouldn't listen.
Right.
And their concerns and try to.
We may have a solution that isn't what you're asking for.
Yeah. And ultimately, maybe there's information that's coming out that is gaslighting people or putting a fear in them that isn't the correct language. And we know that nowadays. You get on social media, you can get on the news, and so it's really important to be grounded in my mind in sound principles.
Okay.
And what principles govern your own personal life. And for me, like I'm going to admit a little bit, I didn't go too crazy, but before I was in the city council, I think we can all be critical of elected officials. I have a little bit different view of it.
That's the default position.
Yes, exactly.
Brought to you by George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah. So when I got involved, it certainly opened my eyes to the process. And so I'm always willing to discuss the process, or if I've made a decision, I'm always happy to explain it and be transparent about that. There are times where I've made decisions that I might not give as much information because it's directly related to individuals that I don't want to cause problems, or like we can go into closed sessions as elected officials for only like 5 reasons. One of them is for imminent litigation. Like other one is sale of real property. Like if the city's looking at property, because there's negotiations that shouldn't be in public. And then if that gets known that the city wants to buy land, guess what happens to land prices?
Yeah.
So there's some protections in there. And there's only 5 real reasons. There's only 5 lawful reasons to go into a closed session. If they're discussing anything else, they're doing it unlawfully. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So, but one of them is to talk about, an individual, like it's an employee or a director or somebody that might have challenges, or we're discussing disciplinary things, I don't know that that's appropriate to smear them all over.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
If they do it themselves, that's on them.
Right.
but when things are in those closed meetings, I've sworn an oath not to say anything about those meetings unless I would be subpoenaed to talk about them. Right. And so there's laws that govern us that way. But when it comes to ultimately, that's my best example. If I'm following the Constitution and there's something in the Constitution, why are we even debating it?
Right.
And same with the state Constitution.
Solved.
Now, it doesn't mean we love everything in the state Constitution or what's been drafted, but that's the law. And if we want that changed, there's a process to that, right? And I've loved that in the city because I'm like, all right, we kind of screwed up, or this didn't quite give us the results we wanted, so let's shift it. Let's do it a little different. And it's not for a greater burden. It's I'm all about more liberty and less regulation because the free market really does solve a lot. But I don't know for decades that we've really had a system that does that.
Right.
And so there's no competitiveness against a government agency. However, I was going to tell you earlier, when I go to my department heads, which I'm the legislative part in Perry, but I have a relationship with them that they know what I expect because I represent you or those that elected me and say, this isn't just me. They want this. And so self-reflection's a big deal. Like we need to look inward and say, what is my role in this?
Why am I going against what they want?
Right.
Do I have a good enough reason? Can I explain that to them well enough? Because I'm going to have to. Yeah. I'm going to get voted out.
And ultimately,
or I don't, because we don't necessarily want. I think in any election, right? You being a citizen, we don't want people who just roll over for what 51% say. Right. We want the best government, right?
And there's policies like let's debate policy. Let's do what is the best way to go forward? How do we govern bees?
Yeah.
So
we don't.
But there's some things I'm like, why am I even discussing this? This is a waste of time. But it's still all important. But as you go forward, it is important to listen. But if they know my stance and I think one of my strong suits that's in my toolkit is I give great perspective. And sometimes it's just being the devil's advocate, like say, okay, let's look at this other side. But that's what the representative republic is about. If the mob comes in, it's not mob rule. That's a democracy.
Right.
That's not what we're dealing with here. We have discussion, and sometimes it's a tough debate. I just kind of gave a lesson in church the other day about the Constitution, a little bit about it. And I can only imagine what those founding fathers, those 56 that signed it, how much they debated. And we know so much history and so much about it. Like they had problems. I mean, Abraham Lincoln dealing with slavery, but it was built into the Constitution to eradicate that, right? And we had a process in place, thankfully the right people, because a whole bunch of them didn't want to get rid of it.
Right.
And so like, as we go forward, what are your principles and what is the key things that govern your own personal life? And can we institute those and just be a better citizen, a better neighbor, and be a little more empathetic? And when we can't come to a decision, it's okay to disagree.
Right.
And if we can't come to a decision, that maybe we ought to be better at moderating and just helping people get perspective a little bit. And you can't please everybody. And there are things, but if we're going to be one-sided and that's what I've loved about Perry, I could say we're a more conservative, group, but I can see tendencies when discussions are and my socialism things go on.
I don't know.
Coming back to parks, like we want parks everywhere. It's like, gosh, I understand that, guys. But it's like, it's just going to cost us more money, but let's get to a point where we can sustain that and do a good job at it. And we've got an awesome bike park there's a grand opening for it, as well as a trail on the west side that we've connected. That there's some cool things that are happening, but this is stuff I've worked on for 10 years.
Right.
And so it's meant to be slow for a reason, because otherwise, man, if you could turn on a dime, it'd be scary at times.
Right. Yeah.
So those processes do protect, but I don't know. That's probably a long answer of like, look, I just have guiding principles that I try to stick to as close as I can. And it might be a 50-50 thing. I watched my father-in-law one time in city council. He flipped a coin.
Because it was 50-50, yeah.
Because it really was. And it was okay either way, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
I mean, some were disappointed and anytime you've
Right.
got a 50-50 issue.
It
and
wasn't
so,
life or death for the other half of the people.
however, also when the council speaks, and I always haven't been on the side of when the council decides something,
Mm-hmm.
I don't belabor that. I'm like, the council's decided, time to move on to the next thing.
Right.
I have no, even when people have come in after me or they won, and I don't, it's okay. Like,
Right.
all right, the decision was made. I respect the decision because that was the process, and let's move on.
Right.
And then how do we get together and make things even better going forward, and more participation, not yelling, not screaming, not fear mongering, not calling names or, all that type of stuff. It's like, come to solutions. What is it? There's opportunities all over, but how do we come together and make that happen? So,
Yeah. So what do you know about, or what are your thoughts on the Stratus project? That's a pretty big deal right now.
Absolutely.
If
Absolutely.
I've heard multiple people say that they'd be surprised if the current commissioners keep their spot, and I don't know if that's warranted, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on the matter.
Well, I mean, I caught wind a little bit before around convention that there's something like that was coming down. And so I just tried to get some of my own answers and things like that. The thing is,
It seemed likely with the nuclear power that they were going to bring up there.
right. And that's a little
that
bit,
seemed like a likely thing.
well, the nuclear power was a question, but that nuclear power that's been approved here in Brigham City has nothing to do with this, the data center project. Now, I'm going to just preface like, hey, they were maybe thrown into a corner a little bit, kind of a no-win situation. But again, Kayla, I'm just going to say, we're elected sometimes to make tough decisions.
Right.
And again, on sound principles, and are we following the law? And I don't know if it comes to fruition, what the data center is promising, what the possibilities are, and they handle all the environmental, and I'll deal with that question in a minute, the environmental stuff that everybody's worried about.
They're telling us this. Can we believe this or not? That's kind of two separate things.
Yeah.
If it's what they say it is, then that's a conversation.
Right.
If it's not what they say it is, that's another conversation.
Right.
But,
no, absolutely. And there's good questions there. But I think it's exposed a bit of the inadequacies of the commission on hand. Again, we're throwing stuff all the time to deal. Now, this obviously is large and has never been anything like this, except maybe Morton Thiokol when it was built in the 1950s. And I'll bet we could go back to some, if we pulled up some news articles and edit letters to the editor, I bet there were some pretty upset people.
Yeah, right.
Right. 12,000 acres. You're going to build rockets. It's going to create all this problem.
Yeah.
You can almost write the script for it. Right.
Right.
But I'm not one that's going to just listen to the banter and the screaming and the yelling. I want to get to the facts. And oftentimes fear is faster than the facts getting out.
Right.
And
absolutely.
And those that are against things understand that. And so rather than, getting the facts. So what do we know so far?
Yeah.
Well, we know MIDA was involved. And MIDA is not a Governor Cox thing, like Governor Cox or not. That was created under John Huntsman in 2007. And its job, I mean, you could say their bylaws or whatever they're governed by could be a little egregious and they circumvent things. However, when it comes to the environmental things that everybody's concerned about, I'm actually the chairman of the board for this wastewater treatment plant for Willard and Perry.
Okay.
We have to have a permit written.
The one that's too big.
Yes, it is. And we're trying to figure out there's growth coming and we're not going to use full capacity. We might get there.
You got to go to the bathroom more to make sure we get the outside of it.
Exactly. So we got to hurry and build so we can, that's the whole premise. So we deal with the Department of Environmental Quality all the time for our permitting. Right. And the water that comes out of that sewer plant has got to be pristine if it's going on private land or if it's going to go into a public waterway or whatever the case is. Like it's a nightmare. And it's part of the process. We can't circumvent it. We can't get away with it. I'm sure there's people that try to hide things or whatever, but eventually, I mean, they're monitoring us all the time. We have to take samples of the water. We have to write reports all the time that are being monitored all the time.
Right. I mean, that water is going to be drinking water, right?
Well, no, that isn't. It comes out
Something
for it's great for animals and any irrigation, secondary irrigation.
Okay.
It'd have to go through some more process and treatment if it was going back in, but it's basically cleaner than the Willard Spur that it could flow into.
Okay.
So when it comes to
making things worse.
So when everybody brought up the questions about the environmental stuff, it's not that I don't have those questions, but I also know the EPA. Like, can you imagine being a really staunch EPA employee or director? This is your Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're frothing at the mouth. Like, this
sweet.
is huge. Like, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're gonna regulate it, and there's permitting that has to go through, and they're not gonna get away with circumventing permitting.
Okay.
So MIDA's there. I don't understand everything MIDA, but there's some projects they've been involved with that it's all around the military. So what do I understand on the data center? The data center is meant to support national security and the military. So like AI or not, I mean, our military has been using AI for 30 years, like way in advance of whatever we get. And I've heard reports that some of the stuff they're using is like 50 years ahead of what we're going to get, which is mind-boggling to think about.
Right, because what did we have 5 or 10 years ago? It's like, oh, okay, they can time travel already, apparently.
And we just watched it. The iPhone was introduced in 2007.
Oh, my God.
Has that technology gotten better in almost 20 years, right? Yes, it has. It gets better every year.
Yeah, we used to download our MP3s onto our iPods.
And Gen Xers are ticked because we bought a bunch of cassette tapes and then we had to buy CDs.
And then we downloaded
them and we got rid of that. Now we're paying for streaming service of all the music we had.
Freaking jerks have to subscribe to bloody everything. That's another conversation.
So the technology grows, causes problems, but I'm not as concerned. It's not that I don't have the questions and they need to be met.
Right.
But understanding why they have the amount of land was to tie up the water shares and the water used out there, and understanding the technology that would cool the data plant and all of those systems, if they come to fruition and say what they are and what they'll be regulated as,
right,
there should be zero problem with that. Now,
and if there is concern, as I mentioned earlier, that this is what they said over here and this is what it actually is, then we have recourse to go. And
there's litigation. Again, they didn't decide, and this is the other, I think, misconception. Everybody thinks they approve the actual building of the data center. That's not what happened.
Right. What is that? I've heard that.
It's actually a land use authority. So in essence, they basically created a city out there.
Okay.
That's what they did. And just like when the state or the county allowed us to incorporate back in the early 1900s in Perry, the county allowed that, and the state, that we became our own corporation, we became our own taxing entity, and we were the ones to oversee the project. So MIDA's over that. However, MIDA has to follow all the federal and state standards to build. So there'll be a state building inspector out there constantly. All the stuff that'll be monitored and regulated with air and water and temperature and all of those things will have to go through all that permitting. And if they're not in compliance, they'll have to be in compliance.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like, just like I have to be.
Shut it down.
Yeah. Or, just like I have to be over at the sewer treatment plant when that comes out. And if not, we get into or we're fined like astronomical amounts of money that they could fine us if we're not in compliance.
And the Stratus, so you had mentioned MIDA, and I know O'Leary's involved. That's a private company, right?
Correct.
So it'd be almost a better analogy with your landscaping business. If you're not following that, then you're going to not be able to function.
Right.
As they have a profit incentive that they have to go through, and they don't want to necessarily.
Yeah, and why would they want that shut down, or why would they? And so again,
that's a heavy risk for them to take to shut the whole thing down because they're like, oh yeah, we definitely lied on the water quality.
So when it comes of all of the stuff, I mean. I'm sure that company would love to follow everything that they're supposed to follow. And if they don't, they'll pick up and go somewhere else, which I'm sure there'd be a lot of people that love that it happened.
Right.
So if you can compartmentalize everything, we know MIDA was involved and they helped this move forward.
Right. So you can be mad at them.
Well, that's a little bit, but I had also...
That's one group. Who else?
But there's also a question that would say, when you're dealing with large contracts, which I've dealt with from the landscaping side and buildings and developments, like there's contracts that are in place and there's negotiations that take place. I want to know why, if they were brought to the table at the last minute, why?
Right.
So there's two reasons. So either they didn't need to be, and they're coming to be a good neighbor, or is it possible that maybe there wasn't a great confidence in those at the county to be able to do what needed to be done? And I know there's some negotiation involved, which a lot of people are which I totally agree on the property tax side.
Right. They're getting
a negotiation
deal on the tax rate.
Yeah. And there's some perspective on that if we had more time, we could talk about. But so here you have this city that was created, but we don't even have, like, everybody's making their analysis, but we don't know exactly what technology they're using. We don't know the engineering. We haven't seen the plans.
Right. It could be 50 years from now technology.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, everybody's trying to make their assumptions.
Top secret. If they told you, they'd have to kill you.
Yeah. Or they're saying, well, we're going to base our assumption on the iPhone from 2007.
Right.
Or the old data centers. And are there problems with those? Yes, because they tied into the grid and they tied into local water, and it did put a burden. And the citizens place that because now the infrastructure is overwhelmed and now they have to increase it or da-da-da. You're right. Mm-hmm. Well, in the state of Utah, you can't build those unless you bring your own power.
Yeah.
So the power situation, if there is a little bit, it'll be how do they handle, it's not that I'm not worried about
if it doubles
CO2.
the English, yeah, you're
not CO2.
If it doubles
NOx. The nitrous oxide is the problem.
Right. I was about to say,
it's not CO2.
They're going to be consuming as much as the whole state as far as energy goes for this thing, is what I've heard, at least as much. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and the gigawatt power that they're stating initially.
If that's natural gas, that seems like emissions of some kind.
Right, and there's not enough natural gas through that pipeline that could get them to 9 gigawatts, actually. Okay. So they'd have to come with solar or a nuclear plant and do some scaling, which, again, everybody thinks this is built tomorrow, that we're going to have it tomorrow. This is
5 years. They'll have a different technology.
I mean, they're saying once they break ground, it could be 3 years through the first phase. That's as far as I know. And there's some things on the contract, but my issue is the state was at least smart enough on their end to negotiate some property tax and energy tax before, because there's developers that come in that, like, for instance, this is kind of a smaller scale. There's developers will come in and say, hey, we want to rezone this. And ultimately, when it comes to zoning, if I'm just trying to rezone my property, again, that's a property right thing. But a lot of times city councils overburden the guy buying it, say, well, what are you going to do with it? Well, I'm just wanting an R1 zone, so it wouldn't be anything less than, or density more than a quarter acre in Perry. So that's a possibility, but sometimes city councils overreach and want to know everything before they approve the zoning. But sometimes they step over themselves because they don't understand the process and how to properly negotiate a contract. But I'm not sure how the energy tax was negotiated. I'm sure the state obviously was involved in that percentage that was negotiated. But I'm very curious. I don't know the exact steps, but the county should have had a lot more to say about property tax.
Yeah, is it one of the questions, or one of the things I thought of is what did they actually know about this prior?
Right.
Or what should they have known? Is there some capacity, like, hey, there's some stuff going up on Snowville, like, what's going on there?
And I mean, from my standpoint, I know what I'd done. If that had come down the thing, I'd have started talking to people at the state just to try to get some answers.
Right.
But I would hope that the state level would have some confidence in me that, like, hey, we got somebody at the table who can negotiate, that in good faith will work and do the best thing for the county. But I don't know. There's a lot of misinformation, and I don't get in those weeds, but I would like to know, how did that negotiation happen?
And the fact that we don't know
is a challenge.
Is its own, like, hey, there's a lot of fear being thrown around here.
Right.
We don't know. It could be as bad as the person who thinks it's the worst thing in the world is.
Right.
But we don't know that.
Right.
And we don't know, maybe this is, futuristic alien technology.
Right.
That seems at least as likely.
I was going to say, since they've unloaded all the UFO funds.
Right. They landed their cool little pill capsule over there in where the Stratus thing is going to be, and they're going to unload a bunch of stuff for us. And...
So again, back to the facts. We know, hey, there was going back to the beginning, there were private landowners that met with a private company and signed off on the deal. Again, one of the most fundamental rights, private property. Okay, it's a big scale, nonetheless.
In as much as it doesn't infringe on other people's rights.
Exactly.
They're free to do so. This isn't communist China.
Yeah, and you could actually end up, arguing, all sorts of things. But a lot of the same concerns that people come up with, traffic and bad for children and this, that, I get those same arguments for subdivisions. Yeah. And they never pan out, the fear-mongering that's come in, the arguments, because we don't kill children all over the place because of traffic increase. We don't, it didn't cause more pollution. But the one thing that did happen, we got awesome people that came to our community. And And sometimes there's people that get nasty about it. And I'm like, guys, these are your neighbors now.
Yeah.
And so, and there, I could tell you.
And they blame you for them.
Yeah, that is exactly right. So
they have chickens.
Again, and I would say, and maybe it sounds like I'm more pro-growth. I'm not for it like full throttle, and I'm not against it. I'm like, let's be objective. Let's get planned, because the more we're planned and understand the direction we're going. But in that case of that negotiation, I think the commissioners were in a position to do a better negotiation job. And again, if you're not used to contracts or those situations, and I mean, I wouldn't say I'd been involved in that big, but I've been involved in big projects. So there's just different questions. I understand what's going on in those situations. So it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm worried about my political career. No, I'm trying to lock in what are the questions the community is going to have? How do we get those answers? What was happening? And so it certainly revealed a bit, I think, again, any organization, a lot of times the rise and fall of it has to do with leadership. One of the greatest books ever on leadership was called Good to Great. And it's called Good to Great, and it stemmed from Nucor here in Box Elder County. It was written because of Nucor.
Where have I heard that before? I've heard that somewhere else.
It's an incredible book. It's called Good to Great. I think a university in Colorado did the research on it and worked on it. Incredible book. But leadership is so key that the other question is, the current leadership. I mean, are you better off? I just think they're too linear focused, where I just don't want one thing to improve, Caleb. I want everything to improve. And that's not too much to bite off to say, hey, can we get better with our budgets? Can we get better with getting more out of our dollars until growth comes? And I've lived here for 30 years. Nothing's been overwhelming to me in the county that's massively changed the county's and the citizens' life economically. I think Morton Thiokol, you could argue, is one of the biggest things. And it's, rise and fall, right? People laid off and, they hire a bunch and lay off. I've seen a lot of that layoff. But now on the side of the data center, you have to objectively look at it. The other thing I understand in that contract is they did not require really the county to do I shouldn't say anything except maintain roads and plow them, which is something we do municipality-wise anyhow. And the second thing is provide first responder services. And they're not asking us to pay for it. Those costs will be in. And they are in the first 3 years, there's $5.5 million every year for 3 years that'll come to help the county ramp up with those services. So the question is, what do we need $5.5 million? Because it's dedicated to take care of those services.
Right.
Anything beyond that, the county can use at their discretion. So are we going to waste that? Or are we gonna really understand?
Keep it so that it's always taking care of itself, right? If you fall into $10 million, do you go? Well, do you just go waste it?
Correct.
Or do you make sure all your costs are taken care of in perpetuity, and now you've got another $9 million?
Or do we just simply say, "Ooh, look, $5.5 million. Let's go burn it."
Right.
And I'm just going to say, I don't have a lot of confidence in the county currently to make sure we're going to get the most out of every dollar.
Right.
And not that I'm trying
to burn all of it, they'll burn some of it.
So I'm just saying, do you have confidence in that? And somebody that'll ask those questions,
Right.
The other thing is, okay, for the first 3 years, then the 3 years that the ramp up, 3 years, the first phase is supposed to be finished. I mean, based on what's been talked about. And after that first phase is finished, they're guaranteeing $30 million a year. So again, you could still pull off the $5 million.
Here's what that actually costs, and then we've got
everything else. So that $30 million, first priority is the roads,
best
plowing,
paid
maintenance,
snow plow guy in the world, right?
and also those services that they're requiring.
Right.
So let's say the stratosphere doesn't get as big, but they're still guaranteeing the $30 million at the first. Let's say we just get the first build out. $30 million is pretty good. Our full budget right now is 55.
Right.
But the question is, do you have confidence in those individuals to make the correct choices and put a capital improvements plan together? And like in Perry, we have a parks plan, we have a highway plan, we have a general plan that guides that, so we're not getting off in the weeds and just burning through money. Okay, so long term, if they do full build out in 10 years, they're guaranteeing on an energy tax $108 million. Okay, if we don't use the amount of energy that would equal that amount, they'll change the percentage to guarantee the $108 million. Again, our tax base, our budget in the county is $55 million. Do we have the confidence who's in there that they will be prepared? Yes. Like, do you have confidence in many governmental institutions that money won't get wasted and moved around?
Will it get returned back to the people as some sort of tax deduction, or will it be squirreled away for future generations so that they don't have to worry about their whatever issue, their sewer lines collapsing due to disrepair or something,
or get off on social programs that we'll never be able to control the cost of.
Speaking of burning money.
Yeah. So if you were a citizen and said, if you could pick two things if they did would get you gain trust from the county, what would it be in that situation if they had that $108 million? What would you want to see happen?
Lowering of taxes.
Boom, right there.
Easy.
And
sounds like no taxes is what I'm hearing.
well, there could be. I mean, I think there's a balance, right? But why not in half?
Yeah.
Why not cut the counties? But is there a way to also work with the school district to gain some
my
trust?
next thing is can that be, I don't know. I know sometimes they have to keep things separate.
And they are, because they're elected officials.
Some of that to the schools and be like,
there could be an interlocal agreement from the county to help with that. But that's just, now think about that. That's just one project.
Right.
They're saying, there'll be a lot of construction jobs, up to 8,000 is the number I've heard that it'll create to build it in that 10-year span. That's incredible to create that many jobs, and construction is good work.
Right.
The second thing is they're saying 2,000 to 3,000 jobs. Now, I don't know if that's for that data center. I don't know if that's around the country. But let's say it was around the country, because you can work remotely with AI, right?
Right.
And if technology is growing so fast, we might not even need that big a data center because the technology is getting faster and smaller. And,
right.
I mean, there's all sorts of questions.
The computer that used to fill a room now fits in your pocket.
Correct. Yeah. Right. And even the chips are like ridiculous. They're almost microscopic that they're dealing with. Right. So that could play into things where it's not as big a footprint as people are thinking. Again, if you fearmonger,
it was I heard you say this. I want to make sure I understand. You said, much of the reason it's as big as it is because they needed the right number of water rights.
Yeah, they're not going to build a building 42,000 square.
The building is going to be, however, a Walmart. I don't know what it is, right? And then the rest of it's like, we just need the water from that.
Correct.
So we'll just let the coyotes and the birds and
and they've talked about that the grazing lands leases would be extended for the previous owners to use and graze land. And the other thing is, if the water's not great that they get out there, what if it became pristine water like we create over at the wastewater treatment plant?
They actually treat it.
They'll treat it
better than.
So they'll have their own sewer treatment plant. They'd have their own water treatment plant. They'd have their own energy generation, and whatever they don't use would go in. Now, people would argue, are they really going to do that?
Yeah.
Those are great questions.
I asked that question.
No, absolutely. But what if there was think about everything in our technology. If there's people arguing simply to argue against new generation of energy, we've got a problem.
Luddites.
We've got a problem.
Sometimes one of those.
Yeah, and I get it, but we've got a challenge, right? Yeah. Like, my favorite picture, I've seen protesters on this where they're all holding their no data signs.
Yeah.
But they're all staring at their phones.
They're like, I came up with this argument using clock.
I was like, I want to point arrows like, hey guys.
ChatGPT, make me a really good protest sign.
And I appreciate they have that ability. I'm a results driven guy. And the other thing is, so there is possibilities. And I think the citizens of Box Elder County deserve the opportunity to get tax breaks. And if this turns out the way it could, we better be prepared for it. And I'm going to tell you, what they went through was easy. The challenge is the next 4 years. This is the most consequential election.
We won the lottery. Are we going to be like the guys who are back to where they started 5 years from then? Or have we invested it wisely? And now
do we have
we're the richest county in Utah?
And do we have input from like a capital improvements plan, or are there our parks? Again, we could argue that. Whatever that is, do we have a plan that we've gotten feedback from the residents from the county? And you just can't say, well, all the growth that's coming, but that's just one project. But what are the if that really turned out, what kind of amazing jobs could come into our area? Farming can still exist. Nobody has to be forced out of farming. Those farmers chose to just sell, but that doesn't mean the other ones that are around that want to teach their kids have to get rid of their land.
Right.
And so preservation of those things, I'm all for. I'll be farmers' best friend and loudest advocate.
Right.
And I've got a brother-in-law that him and his son, my nephew, they farm 6,000 acres up in Idaho. Half of it's potatoes and half of it's out. So I understand farming. I've helped them. The power of that is huge, but everything can coexist together. Like
Right.
we can grow and keep that, because we've done that in Perry. We have growth, but we still have orchards, and new orchards have popped up.
Mhm.
New trees have popped up, which is always a good sign. Now, some of those, what do the citizens want us to do? Just buy the farmland and sit on it? Like,
Yep.
I don't think that's constitutional, right? Isn't there something about, the government shouldn't buy? I think I just read something the other day about, government, it's really not in the Constitution except for certain parameters for like a military base or, again, military type things for the government, federal government to be buying land. And I don't think cities should be involved in like development.
Right. It's more
let the market drive that.
It always comes down to freedom, in as much as your freedom doesn't negatively impact the freedom of others.
Exactly. Like you can protest, but if I can't get to work, I have a problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if you're hurting people, destroying property, you should go to jail.
Right. Yeah. And
out.
There are regulations that would ideally be in place. And if they're not working, then we need to, that's probably where your anger should be at.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we're yelling at the wrong people. However, I do have...
Got to yell at something.
Yeah, I mean, the commissioners were throwing something in their lap that was certainly difficult, but I don't have... I just think they could have handled it, especially after they made the vote. Like, is there more communication? What else do you know? What will you share? I do know that there's been grammar requests specifically for things on that contract, and they can't get them. So what's going on at the county level? And I'm not trying to say they're doing one thing or another, but the optics don't look good.
Right.
And so I think had they just said early on and even passed it before, because of the situation they're in, because MIDA does have oversight and the state does, and it wasn't zoned out there. So you could argue that, but just imagine, what if it's something that could dramatically and massively change the trajectory of this county, that can still be as an amazing county, but we have jobs that can keep families here, that can pay well, that makes housing more affordable, and that there's upward mobility possibility, not just the data center, but what other things that could come in.
Right. This would bring some people in, and then it's part of growth, which I know I bag on growth a lot. I understand there are benefits to it, and in some cases it may need to happen, but
sometimes
the manner in which it happens is important, and that doesn't justify fear-mongering. It's real concerns need to be addressed with real information.
Like you've paid an impact moving here. You shouldn't have to pay 3 and 4 and 5 times the impact over and over again.
Right.
The ones coming in should bear that burden because it's at different times. Like we've got people like, whoever built my house in the 1890s, like they bared the burden, and I came in and I've improved it and I bared my burden, and those that have done subdivisions have bared, so there's impact.
But the people that live there already, were contributing to the infrastructure costs because of the taxes they were paying.
For the current costs.
When you brought your kids in, that had already been covered, and now you're just continuing that on. But just as you bring in new subdivisions, new houses, there's new load to be put on it. But those who move into existing houses.
And ultimately the cities around the state of Utah, because I've been to a lot of ULCT meetings, which is the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Okay. And they do breakout sessions, and the towns with similar size come and visit, and they share their concerns. Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest challenge is you've got to prepare, but some of them get an appetite for growth that it's like, it's okay if the free market does that, but let's slow down the subsidies. Let's slow down the deals, and let's just let the market take care of itself. And when landowners are ready to sell and they can get together and do that, then we're in a zoning situation that we say, okay, this is a great subdivision, or you need to meet these standards. But the more Perry has gotten ready and that we're prepared, we have less overwhelming things take us.
Right. You had mentioned,
by surprise.
I think this is an interesting concept of seeing what other cities do. I talked to Tammy Tran, who was Kaysville's mayor.
Oh, okay.
And just a little bit of research on her. I was like, oh, that's great. I would love her to be my mayor.
Right.
based on kind of what she's doing. And I don't know if that's because that's what the people there in Kaysville want, but um, after having talked to her, I was like, oh, that would be really cool if like our mayor talked to her and was like, hey, here's what we've got going. Here's what I see another city doing, and I would like to mimic that.
Right.
Or here's what I see somebody else doing, and I don't want to. As far as your experience with Perry or looking at the county, is there a county that you're aware of that you're like, oh yeah, they kind of nailed it on, X, Y, and Z, and I would very much like to borrow that idea and implement that up here in Box Elder, or the other way as well?
Right. I would say my answer to that, probably the simplest way is, and I hope this comes across okay, I really don't care what other cities and towns do, and counties.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that it's not intriguing and that couldn't be a benefit, but I think oftentimes we live in a world where we can't come up with our own ideas. We've got smart people in Perry, and we've leaned on those individuals to come up with solutions. And so when I go to places like, well, we need to do what Farmington does. Well, I don't think Perry wants to be Farmington.
Right.
Or a Kaysville, right? Now, could there be some ordinances? And what happens oftentimes is city council was, well, I really like that ordinance. So they just bring the ordinance and then pencil whip it into law instead of like, well,
why is that?
Was that really the best thing? Or
Yeah.
could we take just aspects of it and improve ours?
Right.
So there's a lot of times where there's this idea where it's like, we've got to get together. Now, there's ththings that Brigham and Perry need to get together at the table with.
Right.
There's no question. There's things that happen
Our
on the
border.
border and our fire, which, that's a big concern in the county and Brigham City and what they're doing. And I understand, but again, there's things that can be competitive and other things we just don't have an option. Like either we have to have police or we don't, or we have to have fire, we don't. We have to have ambulance services because those are services.
Those regulations are built in.
Correct.
You don't get a choice in that.
Right. It's not like we can. Well, we can a little bit. I mean, Perry chose a couple of things to go with the Weber County Dispatch because we felt it was a better option for us. Now, but I'm all about self-reflection and how do we get better as a city? What is And even then, it's I'm careful because I don't want to get socialistic on people. Like, hey, we're going to decide everything that's going to go on with people's property from here on out. And so we're going to do all this zoning. We're going to blanket zone here. We're just going to decide this. I've never done that in Perry. We've taken individual property owners and zoned, but I've never said, hey, we're going to change this entire zone to commercial. Does that make sense? And limit it. Obviously, there's the free market kind of dictates that a little bit, but there's also we have to look out for, things that are, and I travel all over the state because of my job, because of my business. And I see things maybe in Heber City or building, or I see townhomes that are way cooler, that have a little more creativity to them than the standard, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think the market dictates that over time. And I'm sure people hate the way my house looks. And I don't like how some people's house.
Right.
I can tell you there's a lot of landscapes I don't like either, but it's okay. Like they love that landscape and that's their own personal. And I absolutely love that and respect that. If they ask me to help, I'll be happy to help to find out what do they want. So is there things that could be learned from? There's no question. But if we're looking to other cities to solve our problems, I think we have a leadership problem.
Gotcha.
I think we have really smart farmers. We have smart business individuals. We have incredible finance people here. We have creative people here. If we'll get them at the table that can bring great solutions and great ideas. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's what governs me. But if there's some cool ideas, when our commercial area develops, I'd love to see kind of smaller buildings, smaller businesses that can turn quicker, and not like some big, which Brigham's lost. In my time in 30 years, we lost Fred Meyer, we lost Kmart, we lost Shopco. Was there another one? So big
dealerships.
Yeah, dealerships, which they've come to Perry. So,
you're welcome. I don't know.
Well, it's a free market solution, right? They want to have more exposure. Yeah. Hanson Chevrolet did that. I mean, they're still in Brigham per se, but like I would have done the same thing. I'm like, I want to be a good neighbor, but like Main Street's not where I'm getting more exposure for my business. That road has more. And Heritage, the highway, things like that. So it's not like, hey, we're trying to undermine them. It's like, well, we have land for sale. They can purchase that land and they can build their business on it and they will reap the rewards of that.
And that infrastructure is already there.
Correct. So it's, and we've tried to do things where we're in place and we don't, and there's things we know we need to try to complete to maybe draw some things in, but we're not trying to be developers either.
Mm-hmm.
And like, again, let the market, we have services. We've got, you know,
We got Walmart. That's all you need.
well, yeah, we've got,
and a DI.
We have sewer. We have plenty of water. We're one water tank away from being able to completely build out Perry. That's our foresight, meaning we're preparing for the future. And so we're not worried about water. It doesn't mean we're not good stewards.
Right.
But we're preparing ourselves and not waiting for somebody to do that for us.
Yeah.
And those are the things that are most important in communities, not the coolest parks or whatever the case. Can we have now, is there revenue to do that eventually? And you've got businesses to support it and the community gets bigger, man, go for it.
Yeah.
But if that takes priority over your services of sewer and water and roads and stuff like that, you got a priority issue.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, get that in line, grow your business sector, keep taxes low, and then the revenue will come. So
anything else that you want to cover that we haven't addressed?
I think, every morning my wife, when I wake up, she's like, what the crud are you doing? But at the same time, through the day, I just get excited. I'm like, I don't see the data center or even the challenges as problems. They're challenges, and I'm just excited. Like, they're solutions. And Brigham City, or not Brigham City, but Box Elder County, all of Box Elder County has a potential that can be unleashed. And I think there's been forces out there that have kind of stopped that growth. And you can go across this country and find towns, they are dead, and they're suffering. They don't have jobs. Everybody's moving out. There's no industry. And if you don't have some steady growth in industry and good jobs, not just entry-level jobs. I mean, occupations. Farming's great, but not everybody can be a farmer, right? And so you moved here, maybe for cost effectiveness and you're, commuting south or whatever. But how do we change that you don't necessarily have to be? I know people are willing to commute. I get that. But it doesn't mean that we just should sit and do nothing and not at least figure out a way. What could be, what could the future be?
What could we improve? That's fair. I think it's good to try to see what can be improved.
Yeah. And ultimately, but if the fundamentals aren't right, your budgeting, the way leadership happens, the way how we take care of our employees, how are we efficiently taking care of roads and infrastructure and the things that Schools. The county's involved with, the sheriff's department, I've got concerns about, and all these different things. Like, if we can work together and we're good stewards of that, like in Perry, there's always people that have concerns when things go up or whatever the case is, but we can tell you where every dollar is.
Yeah.
We can tell you where the projects are going. What are we trying to prepare for? And we're not just saying, okay, we're going to go get a $250 million bond and throw it at stuff.
Right.
Perry will never do that without a plan in place. And so the more planning you have, the less overwhelmed you'll be, and the steadier growth will be. And then government will not grow faster than your paycheck. And as that growth comes, and those impacts and the property taxes that are gathered from new growth should offset the things that are happening. But if you're not doing anything, you're going to just continue to raise taxes.
Right.
If you're doing too much. So there is a balance there, but if you're not willing to push back and say no and say, well, this is the way we've always done it, and say, no, it's not. We're going to do it differently now. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over. Right. And so I just think there's some unique leadership stuff, the experience of Perry, not that what we've done in Perry is the exact recipe that needs to happen in the county, but I just know the way we've gone about it could be of great use and great benefit to the county to avoid the challenges I promise you are coming. If we continue down the same road,
it's going to blindside us, and then we'll have to. And
everybody, I mean, you think people are mad and upset now, but you can gain the trust of voters if you're good stewards and you communicate that. And the more planned you are and the more forward thinking you are of thinking the things to come, that's what you've hired us to do, so to say. And again, I don't feel overly bad for the commissioners because they were elected to make hard decisions. This isn't going to be the only hard decision. And if they're freaking out about that decision, we've got a challenge.
Right.
And so we need leaders in there that have that it really is about what's in those that are running for election, what's in their toolkit and what's in their wheelhouse that they're capable of doing
Right.
and bringing solutions to the table that really can be a positive impact for the community. And again, I'm a big fan of, if you polish the process, the results get better. And I don't think our processes are really great in the county. And that's because if there's no real good accountability, then if I'm not held accountable, why should I improve, right? I can just kind of keep things going the way they are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's no
Do you have
incentive
kids?
there. Yes.
Do you set a standard for your kids?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And it's interesting how they'll meet that standard.
Right.
And it's not you're punishing them. It's more like, how do I help you get there?
Right.
And these are the reasons why, and you'll understand more when you reach that.
Right.
And so if people would just understand they're at in their life because of choices they've made, and they take full accountability, like their life will be much more peaceful and much more full of joy and success and blessings beyond there if they stop blaming everything else around them that's going on. And I've been beat up for things on job sites that weren't even my fault. But I still ask myself the question, did I have a hand in that?
Right.
Was I a problem? And
what have I done to get me to this position?
Yeah. And if so, going forward,
that guy. No,
yeah, no, exactly. How do I become more of a solution oriented, that it's not just about me, that how do I help others lift? And great Zig Ziglar used to say, I don't know if you know Zig Ziglar, we said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll automatically have what you want. And if you can help enough people be successful at whatever they're doing, it could be just a young boy learning to read. It could be an adult learning a new skill where they can get a better paying job, or it could be a thing of encouragement that just allows them the courage to go apply for a new job, or to reach out to new friends or say hello to their neighbor or whatever the case is. And so we get all mad and then we just kind of look inward instead of, gosh, we can do a lot better. And Brigham City, as well as Perry and Willard and the entire county, which I'm excited. I've loved. This is my home. I'll probably be buried either, most likely, and Perry doesn't have a cemetery. We've had people clamoring for that, but it'd probably be in Brigham or Willard. I mean, just because this is where my home's been. So, and I love it. I know the potential of it, and I hope the voters understand how passionate I am. That I everything I can. And the biggest thing is three things I've lived my business by is I do what you say you're going to do, be where you say you're going to be, and don't leave anything undone. So.
All right.
That's me, Nathan Tueller.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being
Caleb.
on.
I appreciate you having me in tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. You can find more information on our Facebook page. And if you found this helpful, please leave a like and a comment. Remember, get informed, get involved, and turn to the Lord in all things. Cheers.